So let's fire up Blender here, and we'll get rid of the cube. Here we are with the plane. I'm going to expand the plane with S. I'm then going to let's hit Control A and scale, just to apply the scale. Remember, if you have it non-normalized like this, even though each of the scales is the same on each axis, if it's not 1, 1, 1, then you are going to have problems with doing things in edit mode, particularly with modifiers like the bevel editor. So make sure it's 1, 1, 1 like that with normalizing it. Control A. Let's go into edit mode, and here we are. Subdivide, number of cuts, I'm just clicking and dragging here to the soft maximum of 10. Can't get it beyond 10. And of course you can then subdivide again, and you can make another 10 cuts if you want, and another 10 cuts after that if you're crazy enough. But if you want to bypass having to reapply it, then you just click and you can enter a typed number into the value box up to 100. 100 is what's known as the hard limit, and I'm not going to do 100, obviously that's way too many, so let's just do 60. Right, so there we are with a reasonable amount of mesh. I'm in vertex mode. You can see the little dots at the locations, vertex locations. One vertex, two vertices. And let's go to proportional editing up here, or just hit O on the keyboard and select a range of fairly random verts and GZ. Then I'm going to select random. Let's select random. It defaults to 50%, which is way too many. Let's take it down to about 3%. And again, GZ, but this time scrolling the mouse wheel to reduce the influence, so we get a little more roughness. It still doesn't look natural, but at the same time it looks better than it did. And yeah, we'll leave it kind of sort of like that. Okay, so there is our landscape. Right, now we want to look at it in plan view. We can either click on Z on the tripod, top right of the 3D window, or we can hit 7 on the keypad, or we can go to viewpoint and top view. So there are 3 ways to do this: clicking on the tripod, hitting 7 on the keypad if you've got one, or going to the menu drop down, view and view from the top. Let's change our selection mode. I'm hitting W here just to cycle through the options. I like tweak. That's quite a useful one. And from tweak we can now hit C to access circle select. We can, if we want, just cycle through and actually remain in circle select mode like that. That's lasso, by the way, but tweak is good. So C, drag with the left mouse button, scroll to change the size like this, and then drag with the left mouse button to make a fine path across this equally fine landscape. And I lifted my finger there. Okay, let's connect it up. That's good. Now right click to get out of the persistent circle select mode. Some paths follow the contours like this. Let's not do that. Let's make it SZ and reduce the scale on the Z axis, maybe not to 0. Let's leave a little variation here. So I'm pulling down the cursor close to the origin point. You can see it's not quite flat, but it's fairly flat. And then I'm going to hit GZ and move it up for either a levee or move it down for a cutting, but more likely I'm going to just move it so that it's distinct from the surrounding landscape. And remember that proportional editing is still enabled here.
Yep,
Okay,
I think that kind of
so
answers it. Oh, Chris. So in the chat, people had some questions about the midterm. I want to make sure before I mislead people, content leading up to week 5 will be on the midterm. Does that include week 5?
Up to and including week 5.
Okay. And oh no, sorry, continue. Okay. And then the midterm is typically all multiple choice, is that right?
That's right. It's going to be 40 questions, 4 possible answers for each question, only one of which will be correct. And there are no deductions for wrong answers. 40 questions, quarter of a point each. So the total for the midterm and the final examination will be 10 points.
Okay. And then I think the last question for the midterm is content that will be covered is like Blender UI elements and or light and color theory, things like that.
Anything that is in the first 5 modules and the associated videos, but not the external videos. Not the ones that I linked to that I didn't make myself.
There's a few other hands raised.
Yeah.
David, Carol, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, it says in the first assignment that one of the points is setting up a default new page, if that makes any sense. You know, when we're in the first part of section 2, we had to make a new default open page for new projects. How exactly are we going to be graded on that? Do we need to submit something extra?
No, you don't have to submit anything extra. And in fact, because we can't really tell if you've got a new default page or not, then this is purely for your own convenience, but it's worth going through the exercise because this can be so convenient. So, for example, if we have a setup here and we have a target camera and various objects with much used, commonly used materials in the outliner, then we can go to default, save startup file, and click on that. And then when we've done that, the file that we've saved will actually be the first thing we see when we open up Blender again. So it's going to be we're going to crash straight into it. And this is quite useful if you're working on a big project because you can actually set your project file to be the default file and you can go straight into it. You can also get rid of everything, load factory settings, but I don't recommend that because it clears an awful lot more. It's you might as well have a selection of startup files saved in your backup library, for example, and then open one of those and then save it as the startup file when you want to go back to the previous setup, when you don't want to be opening your particular project file. But this is very much a matter of your own choice as to how you work with Blender.
We were talking about startup files, how we were going to be graded on that, and you said that we can't actually tell if you're making a default file.
Without you sending us a screen recording when you open up Blender, no. So let's look at one example. Preferences, and let's go to add-ons, and we'll look for cam, and right, there we are, camera, add camera rigs. So this is an example of something you might find useful, I'm not saying you will right now, in a default file. So that we can now go to cameras, and we've got 3 types of rigs. Let's look at crane. This is a typical movie-style crane camera setup. And let's go to pose mode, because this is actually based on an armature. We'll look at pose mode next week. And there's our target. So let's go, as I say, into pose mode, move the target down, G, and just move it. And you'll notice it keeps facing the camera, and the camera keeps pointing at the target. select the vertical point and scale it. Again, S for scale. Again, see how the camera points at the target all the time. And if we go, there is an interesting feature here. If we go past the point the camera is looking at, look at the closed triangle on top of the camera that indicates which way up it is. And if I extend it, now it flips over. So you want to be careful to avoid this. This is something that inevitably happens when you've got a camera that's locked to being vertical. And whoops, I just made a negative scale there, but never mind, let's just leave that for the moment. There's our camera rig, and you notice we've got widgets associated with it in the collection. Let's yeah, there are the widgets. Well, we'll talk about those later. Don't worry about them for right now. And there's our camera. I'm going to select the crane rig again, just go into pose mode, and because this is bugging me, I'm going to scale it in a positive direction if I can. Yeah, there we go. That's better.
Alexi, you have a question?
Hi. Yes. So I've had a I wanted to ask this for the longest time. So I noticed with the long project, it says that we're gonna have to show you some sketches to determine whether we can like continue on to actually start designing our models. So I was wondering when is that possibly going to occur?
That's in assignment 2.
Okay.
And really what we're looking for in that part of assignment 2, which is open right now, it's worth 3 points out of the 15, is for a sketch, and you can either sketch it in a drawing program, or you can photograph a pencil sketch, we don't care, along with about, I don't know, a paragraph or two of description, so that the graders can intuitively figure out whether this is realistic or whether you're being really, really ambitious, and you probably won't be able to do this in the time available. And if not, they will send this on to the TAs,
Okay.
and the TAs will make their determination on it, and if they want a little bit more advice on it, then they contact me. But I don't want to make the determination on every single long project, because, well, there's 200 of you, so that's going to take a long time, and most of them I'm sure are going to be absolutely fine. But the thing is, you want to look at this as being a potential portfolio piece. You want to be a bit ambitious, and B, you want to look at what you can do in the time, given your other commitments to UCSC before the end of the quarter, and C, you also want to think about how well you've been getting on with Blender. You know, make sure that you've got a good solid baseline that you can get a good grade for, and then if you have the time and the skills and the motivation from that point on, then you can incrementally add new features to your long project.
Oh wait, Chris, just to be sure, didn't you say you were releasing assignment 2 this week?
You know, you're absolutely right. Looking at it, I realize that I have assignment 2 as being in week 5, which is of course next week. So yeah, I will change assignment 2 to start this week, and I will change the open date to be something like Wednesday or Thursday, because of course next week we've got the dreaded midterm with its 40 multiple choice questions. But don't worry about that, they're all pretty straightforward questions, believe me. And certainly as regards the midterm, you know, you don't need to be absolutely obsessive about it. If you get, it's only 10 points. So if you get 7, 8, 9, it's not going to make a huge difference to your grade. The big thing that makes the difference to the grade is, coming back to the long project again, the long project, because that is 25 points out of 100 for the whole of this course. So think about that.
And then Xiaoqing.
Oh, hi. I have a question about the assignment that we're going to turn in this Friday. I'm just wondering because do we have to color the path as well in a different color? Because I just have my landscape in one solid color.
Well, I don't actually think that it's a requirement in the rubric. So it can be the same color as the landscape, but let's have a look. Okay, assignment 1, and moving down to the rubric, always check the rubric. So create a landscape with a level path, subdivide a plane, select the verts to form a path, and level them. Yeah, you do not have to make them a different color.
If you want to paint the path though, that's fine.
Okay. And also like for the add color to everything, like making a material with the submaterial, is that just like adding the regular, like just adding color?
Yeah, so this is adding a submaterial to the material that already exists in your landscape. Let's go back to Blender, and I'm going to hide the crane rig. Let's just get rid of the camera too, and then we'll look here at what we've got, which is our landscape. And I'm going to just, I'm going to hit Control Z a bunch of times because I want to get back that selection for the path. And keeping going. There we are. Right, so now we've got the original selection for the path.
Mm-hmm.
And we can use this to create a submaterial, but we can't do it in object mode. We've got to be in edit mode, which we are right now. And we don't have a material because I deleted that as well, in fact, with the Control Z's. So let's make this green, and we'll make this a fine grassy green. There we go. And you'll notice that actually this is the path that's selected. But at the same time, I'm going to add a new material. I'm hitting the plus here to make a new slot, then adding a new material with the new button, and that's going to be path. And then we'll give that a suitable color. Let's not make it gray. Let's make it a yellow brick road or something imaginative. There you go. So there you go. We got a yellow path, and we got a green landscape. Okay, so now we got these two sub-materials. The path, I'm going to hit assign, and you can only do this in edit mode. If we go into object mode like this, you'll notice that assign and remove don't exist. So all we can do is change the color of the whole object because it's object mode. In edit mode, however, we can choose a sub-material, and then we can assign it, so now the path is yellow. And if we then choose the inverse to the path, let's go up to, let's actually go to face select, because we should really do this for face selection. Select invert. So now we Control I on a PC, so now we have selected the inverse of the previous selection. We choose green and we assign. And there we go. Now, if we go back to object mode and we look at material preview, we've got a yellow path on a green landscape.
Yeah, I think I understand. I was just confused for a bit with the material and the submaterial.
M had a question now.
Oh, hi. For assignment 1, I know for the Eevee rendering, when you get a picture of it, that like the transparent windows, they appear solid. Do they have to be transparent for the assignment, like for the picture we turn in?
Okay, well, let's have a look. Let's go back into Canvas and see what I actually said. Always go to the rubric. So assignment 1, and down to the rubric, and that's going to be make windows on two sides. Nothing there. Add colors to everything. And glass by making a material with submaterials. No, it doesn't say anything about transparency here. So the only requirement in the rubric is to make the glass in the window a different color to everything else in the house model.
All right.
However, supposing you do want to make a transparent material, let's have a look at doing that. I'll move this onto screen 3 or halfway onto it, and let's add a little house. Let's begin by adding a standard cube, and I'll just have it selected, GZ, move it up so that it's reasonably embedded in the landscape, and let's go to editing. Control R on a PC, not around the Y-axis. We do, if at all possible, want to make our divisions around the X-axis in the YZ plane. So yeah, there's the X-axis, the red one. We can also tell from the tripod which direction the X-axis is running on, if we happen to have the visibility for those axes in the 3D window turned off. So Control R. Want to put this in the middle, so just hit 0 for the edge slide value, and we're in edge select mode, so we can just choose the top edge, G and Z, constrain it to the Z axis, and let's just say that's our little house. Now we want to go to face mode, and I'm going to select the side of the house that is closest to us. Note that we've got 1, 2, 3 options for vertex, edge and face, and those are alphanumeric, not on the keypad. So here's our face. Hit I to inset. I'm really close to the center of the selected face, so I can't pull it in very far. I don't have a lot of control. Let's hit escape. And then I'm going to move my cursor a reasonable distance outside the selected face and hit I again. Now I've got more control, but beware. It's now possible to go beyond the original center of the face. And you can tell from the shimmering Z fighting of the new face that it's actually duplicating, it's coplanar with the existing faces in the front. So this is not the way to do it. We do not want to be seeing those diagonal edges inside our new face. Pull out a little bit, that's much better. That is what we want, and now we have more control. And I'm going to say, yeah, that's good. So E for extrude, I for inset, E for extrude again, in. And now we've got the window glass selected. So we're going to go to new material, and let's just make this, what shall we make this? Let's just make it house. Be imaginative here, and the house will be whatever, red, something like that. And we'll make a new submaterial. Hit plus for a new slot, new for a new material, and this is going to be not window, glass. There we go. We might want something else, glass in the scene. So for that, let's just go to house here, select glass. It's the same, well, not quite the same color, but let's take it off the default. In fact, let's not use the principled BSDF. Let's click on principled BSDF and scroll up until we get to glass. Choose that, and we can't see it because we're in shaded mode. Let's have a look at it in render preview. Still can't see through this glass. Why not? Well, let's go to the scene, and we're in Render Engine Eevee. Remember, Eevee is a game engine, and it doesn't work very well with transparency. Let's go to cycles. Okay, now we're getting something that looks a little bit better. And we're getting some strangeness. So let's go back into just shaded mode to improve our modeling. Let's move the 3D cursor. I'm going to create a light at the point of the 3D cursor, move it down, GZ, so that it's inside the house. I'm going to add some light inside the house. There we go. Now we can start to see something going on inside the house. Looks kind of like it's on fire, to be honest. Though we can see some nice light coming out through the window onto the landscape. Let's next go to increase the power. It's only 10 watts. And that looks better, 60 watt. Still not seeing anything very clear inside the house. Why is that? So let's now spin around a bit and go to the size, increase the size of that point light. Material preview, not going to do a lot for us, to be honest. So let's go back to our selection. Oh, incidentally, the cursor, if we want the cursor to be at its original place, I'm clicking now, and you can see everywhere I left click, I'm placing a 3D cursor, which isn't what we want. So first of all, I'm going to bring in the right flying with the N key, and then go to View, Location 3D Cursor, 0, Tab, 0, Tab, 0, Enter. And now it's back at the original 0, 0 location that we started off with. And then I'm going to go back into select mode. Okay, but none of that solves the problem of this opaque window. We've got one more thing to do. The glass material is well and good, but let's now go down to Material and go down to Blend Mode, Alpha Blend. Now we can start to see some detail inside the house. We can see the point light, which is a sphere because I increased the size. We can see the corners, the internal corners of the walls. All this because we've changed blend mode to alpha blend, and this enables the alpha transparency. So although we can't see a great deal more detail inside the house now, we can at least see the volume of the point light. And also I need to move that house down slightly. It seems to be sitting on the landscape in a strange prefabricated way. But also, let's just look at the size of this house. It's effectively a 2-meter cube, which is about 6 foot 8 inches. So this is actually rather overlit by the 60 watt light we've got. So let's pull it down again. I'm going to take it down to about 12 watts. That looks a little better. And also remember that the redness of the interior is due to the white light bouncing off the red walls and onto the ground, producing this strange yellow color. So remember again that the color of a surface, the color of a pixel in a final render, or as in this case a preview, is based on the color of the light, the color of the surfaces that it bounces off, and finally the color, which in this case was red, so let's change it to white, of the surface it ends up on. And it's a combination of all those, plus obviously the various characteristics of the display device and the eye of the person who is perceiving it, whether they have red-green color blindness and whether they're viewing it on a grayscale or maladjusted monitor, something like that.
So just to be sure, students do not have to make windows transparent for assignment 1, right?
No, they do not.
Okay. Burley, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've got another question. So I recall your mini lecture on lighting in Unreal, and as far as I understood it, it was basically the amount of lighting on a surface is dependent on, directly proportional to the cosine of the difference between the normal and the angle of the light, right?
Right.
Um,
Though to be more precise, there are a wide number of factors relating to this. And really, that's only true for something like ground shading.
yeah, so I was curious, how can one mess with the lighting engine in this program? Because I was curious if you could do something similar to bending light with massive objects, and it seems like a fun simulation to try and create.
What is your major?
I'm a math major.
Yeah, how could I guess? All right, well, the short answer is yes. The long answer is that everything in Blender, just like every other 3D modeling and rendering and animation software, is entirely imaginary. You can have negative lights. You can have one-sided surfaces. You can have animated negative gravity. Nothing is real.
If it's not too much trouble, could you point me in the direction of some documentation on how that's done, or anything you might know about it?
Since you're in my section, you can come ask me about it. I
I'll
don't know
bug you
anything.
then.
I don't know anything about the lighting engine, but I can help you with scripting.
Right, I'll defer to Herman here.
Okay, thank you.
Someone asks, any changes to the original house design is acceptable, or just stay with the simple house?
Well, I'm going to say what I always say in these circumstances, which is look at the rubric and make sure you've satisfied every single condition of the rubric as it is written, because that's what your grader is going to use to grade your project. And then if you want to go further without actually messing up what you did before, adding more wings and dormer windows and all kinds of stuff, then you go right ahead. Because remember that all these homework assignments, up to and including the long project, are intended to be portfolio pieces if you want them to be, if you have time for them to be. So I'm very happy for you to go above and beyond what is minimally specified, as long as you satisfy everything that is indeed actually specified.
David has a question.
Yes, in my model, I accidentally raised a portion of it and saved it that's 0.00 something or 0.0 something above where it should be. So the roof of my project, one of the top parts of one of the eaves is just slightly off. Will that be an issue for grading, considering it's not completely flat?
It's not actually specified, but I'm going to say yes.
Guess I'll have to start over again.
Well, strictly speaking, you don't have to, but I think it's in your interest to try to get your roof plane level, because this is an important skill that you'll need to develop. However, in the event that you don't actually have the time, you can add a note to your grader. And the way you do this, let's do this right now, in fact, because changes that you make to the interface in your project will be preserved with the project. So I'm going to make a vertical split here, a horizontal split between the outliner and the properties. There we go. And I'm going to change this to be a text editor. And then in that text editor, I'm going to pull it along a little bit, because you can't actually see all the options at the original width. Although, frankly, if it is at the original width, you can just scroll your mouse wheel and see all the options that way. So that's another way to see everything in a header bar that's too wide for the window. But anyway, here's our text window. Let's make a new text data block. And we'll say, hi, Mr. Grader, or indeed it could be Ms. Grader. greater person. Please note that my roof is not flat. And, you know, give a reason. You'll note that is not is actually in red because this is actually a Python editor. So it's going to, by default, it's going to flag stuff that's not actually correct syntax. So let's enable word wrap. Let's disable syntax highlight because we're not writing a Python script. And what else? You can see you can run a script direct from the text editor, but we don't want to do that right now. Format, no, nothing there. Yeah, I think we're good. So let's push this back again. You notice that the text is now wrapping, which is useful, and we don't have the numbering at the beginning of the lines. And now when you save a project like this, your grader will see that window and the text contained therein, and you can make you can give your reasons for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to say this is good for now. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you to Tessa and to Herman for their moderation of the questions and their helpful advice. And we'll probably do this again in a couple of weeks. So if you have questions, send them into your tutors, and your tutors or the TAs will answer them. And if there are enough people asking the same kind of questions, then I will go through these questions with the answers, I hope, if I know the answers, in the next Zoom session in, as I say, a couple of weeks. But it might be a week, it might be 10 days. We'll just have to see how things go. Okay, thank you, everybody.